In this recording, we're going to look at how we can keep a record of all our receipts and issues of materials together with the balances. And in doing this, we will be using the three methods of Fifo, Lifo and Avco. We will be keeping a record of the movement of inventory using what is known as a store's ledger card. And here we have an example of the layout. So the first column is the date, in which we enter the date of the transaction. Then we have three columns that relate to the receipts of the material. So we record the quantity, we record how much we paid for that material, and then we record the total cost. Then we have three columns that relate to the issue of material. So how much material have we taken out of the warehouse? At what price are we issuing it? So what is the total issue cost? And then the final three columns relate to the balance of materials. So how much have we got left? What is the cost? And what is the total value? So these stores ledger cards are used when recording the movement of material, whether we use the Fifo, the Lifo or the Avco method. So I'm going to run through writing up these cards using those three methods. So if we firstly look at the example that I'm going to use. So we have following data about a particular line of inventory. Opening balance is nil. If there was an opening balance on your store's ledger card, you would write it in the balance columns. So we are then told that on the 1st of September we received 100 units and we paid £5 each. On the 2nd of September we issued 50 of those units. On the 10th of September we had another receipt. The price has gone up. On the 20th of September an issue, and then on the 27th of September another receipt, and the price has gone up again. So we've got rising prices. And we are to write up the inventory record card or the store's ledger card. You'll see a couple of different names for it, using Fifo, Lifo and Avco. So I'm going to start with Fifo. So the first thing that we have is on the 1st of September we received 100 units. They were £5 each, so that works out to £500. Then we go across to our balance column, so we now have in stock 500 units. They're £5 each, so that's £500. Then the next transaction. So we issued 50, and that was on the 2nd. So 2nd of September, sorry, that is in the wrong place. Let me just call up my eraser and rub that out. There we go. 2nd of September over here. We issued 50. Now we're using first in, first out, so the price we issued them out at is the price of the first delivery that came in. And if we look at our first delivery, it was £5. So we issue them out at £5. So that works out at £250. So I've just spotted another mistake. I hope you spotted it as well. I need my rubber. This here is not 500. We had 100. We've issued 50, so that leaves us 50 left in stock, £5 each, so that is £250. So let's see what the next transaction was. 10th of September, a receipt, 40 units at £5.50 each. So 10th of September, we received 40 units, £5.50 each. That is £220. So across to our balance column. Now this is where it gets just a little bit more complicated, because what I suggest that you do is get used to rewriting what you've already got in the balance column and then adding the new receipt to it. So what we know is at the moment we have 50 units at £5, which is 250, and we're receiving another 40 at £5.50, which is 220. So in total we have 90 at a value of £470. Now you might wonder why we do that, why we just didn't go straight to writing in the £90 at 470. It is because by showing it like this, we can see the exact breakdown of our stock. So we do know we've got 90 units in stock. We know they are at a cost of 470. But what we also know by looking at this is that those 90 units are made up of 50 units that we paid £5 for and 40 units that we paid £5.50 for. When we then come to make an issue, by having this breakdown, it is much easier to work out the cost of the issues. And we'll see that in the next transaction. So if we go back to our example, okay, we've recorded the receipt on the 10th. On the 20th, we have an issue of 60. So on the 20th of September, we're issuing 60. But if we now have a look at this breakdown, we can see if we're doing first in, first out, of those 60, 50 of them were at £5, and then the other 10 must have come from this second delivery when the price was £5.50. So in our issues column, we state we're issuing 50 at £5, which is 250. We're issuing 10 at £5.50, which is £55. So in total, we've issued 60 at £305. What we have left, right, those 50 are gone. We've issued them. This 40, we've taken 10 from them. So we have 30 left. This is of the batch that we paid £5.50 for. So we have £165 worth. And finally, the last transaction, 27th of September, another receipt, 100 units at £5.60. Units. Sorry, not concentrating. Put it in the wrong column again. There we go. Rub that one out. Received 100 units, £5.60, £560. So remember, when we come to do the balance, before we add on our new receipt, rewrite out what we already have. So we know in the balance column we have 30 that were £5.50, so that's £165. We've added in another 100 at £5.60, so that's £560. So in total 130 units, valuation of 725. So there we have our stores card. So by keeping a running balance at any time during the course of the month, we can just look at this card, see how many units we have in stock, and see what the valuation of those units are. These stores ledger cards would also be used in conjunction with the control limits that we've looked at, because knowing exactly how many you have in stock would allow you to identify when you'd reached your reorder level and then place an order for further items. So we've seen FIFO. So during the course of the month we have received in total 100 plus 40 plus 100, so we have received 240 units. The total cost of those units, if we add up the total cost column, comes to 1,280. We've issued 50 plus 60 is 110. And the cost of our issues, 250 plus 305, which is 555. Now we can use these figures just to check our balances are correct. So 240 minus 110 gives us 130. 1280 minus 555 gives us 725. So we have correctly written up our stores ledger card using FIFO. So what about Lifo? Lifo uses the same basic method as FIFO, except we issue the last items received first. So I'm going to use those same figures, but this time using the Lifo method. So our first transaction again is on the 1st of September. We had received 100 units, £5 each, £500. So putting that into our balance column, we have 100 units, £5 each, £500. Just a reminder of the transactions. 2nd of September we issued 50. So the 2nd of September we issued 50. Last in, first out. So we issue those at the last or most recent price we paid. Well, we've only got one price, £5. So we've issued at £5. So that leaves us with 50 units at £5, which is £250. So currently there is no difference between the Lifo and the FIFO method. Right. But let's look what happens as we continue recording the transactions. So on the 10th, a receipt of 40 units at £5.50. 10th of September, 40 units, £5.50 gives us £220. Now as before we add these to the balance, let's write down what we already have in stock. Well, we have 50 units at £5, that's 250. We now have another 40 units at £5.50, which is 220. So we have 90 units, £470. Now we have an issue. 60 units on the 20th of September. So 20th of September, 60 units. Before we write that in the issue column, let's just have a look at our balance. We're issuing 60 units. We're doing last in, first out. So our last delivery was this delivery of 40, where we paid £5.50. So we're going to issue those first. Last in, first out. Those 40 units have just come in and now they're going out again. We need another 20 units, so we take it from this delivery where the price was £5. So 20 at £5 is £100. So in total 60, 320. So what does that leave us with? Well, these 40 have gone. We've taken 20 from this batch of 50. So we've got 30 of them left. They were £5, so that's £150. And then finally, 27th of September, receive another 100 at £5.60. 27th of September, 100, £5.60, gives us 560. So before we add that to the balance, we rewrite what we currently have. So we have 30 at £5. We have another 100 now come in at £5.60. So in total, 130 at £710. So let's just compare that to Fifo. 130 at 710, Fifo 130, so we would expect the units to be the same, but they were valued at 725. So we've got a higher valuation. And if you think back to what we've talked about, times of rising prices, Fifo gives us the highest stock valuation, Lifo gives us the lowest, with Avco coming in the middle. So we can see Fifo has given us 725, so that's definitely the highest. Lifo 710, so we'd expect when we do the Avco valuation that it will fall between those two. Again, we can check our figures, add up our quantities that we've received, 240, valuation of 1280, add these up, 110, 570, and now just check, take those two figures away, make sure it comes to 130, take these two away, make sure it comes to 710. And that's the Lifo method of stock valuation. So we have just one more to look at, which is the Avco, or the average cost. So, start off the same. Quick reminder back. 1st of September, received 100 units at £5, and then on the 2nd we issued 50. So back to our card. 1st of September, received 100 units at £5. That's 100 at £5, so £500. 2nd of September, we issue 50. Now we issue at the average cost. So the average cost is the total value divided by the total quantity. which in this one we can see 500 divided by 100 is £5. So we're issuing them at £5. So that's 250. So that leaves us 50 in stock at £5, which is £250. The 10th of September, we received another 40. The price had gone up to £5.50, so that's £220. Now, unlike Lifo and Fifo, when we do Avco, we don't need to rewrite what we already have in stock before adding this receipt to it. The reason we rewrote it in Lifo and Fifo was so that we could see the breakdown of our balance and how much we had in each batch at different values. Because with Avco we just issue at an average cost, we don't need to know the individual prices that we've paid. So that actually makes this one a bit easier. So we've got 50 units, add on 40, that's 90. We had £250 worth, add on 220, that's 470. And in the cost column we put the average cost. So 470 divided by 90 gives us 522. So in there goes 522. On the 20th, we issued 60. We issue at the average cost. Well, we've already worked out the average cost, it's £5.22. So 60 at 522, 313.33. What we've got left, 90 minus 60, 30, 470 minus 313.33, 156.67, and the average cost is still 522. And finally, on the 27th of the 9th, we received 100, paid £5.60, £560. Add that to what we already have. We now have 30 plus 100, 130. Then add our values, 156.67 plus another 560 gives us 716.67. So our cost, the average cost, 716.67 divided by 130 gives us 551. So we put 551 in there. And that's it. So what we have done is each time we've issued, instead of looking at the actual prices we've paid, we just issue out at an average price. We can still do a check by totaling up our columns. 240, 1280, 110 and 563.33. So does this valuation fall between Fifo and Lifo? So let's go back. 725, 710, 716. So yep, Fifo has given us the highest stock valuation then Avco, then Lifo, which is what we would expect in times of rising prices. So those are the three methods. You do need to be able to write up these stores ledger cards, or you may see them referred to as stock cards. So you need to get familiar with these methods. You also need to be aware of the differences between the three methods. So we have got a table here which I'll just briefly mention, but you do need to have a good look at this. In terms of an actual cost system, we've got ticks for Fifo and Lifo. What that means is that the items are issued out at actual costs that were paid, right? Whereas Avco is not an actual cost system because we issue it out at an average cost. Fifo and Avco are acceptable to SSAP 9 IAS 2, so these are the accounting standard. Basically what that is saying is that if you use these stock valuations to put into your financial accounts, providing you've valued using either Fifo or Avco, that is acceptable. Lifo is not an acceptable method to value your stock for your financial accounts. And the same applies to whether it's acceptable to HMRC. Right, Fifo and Avco are acceptable, Lifo is not. Of the three methods, if you're doing manual records, then Avco is probably the easiest of the three because you are not having to rewrite your balances before you add a new receipt. Trying to compare different jobs is easiest with Avco because we've averaged our cost of our stock rather than seeing differences in the prices each time. In terms of good store practice, actually on the shop floor you would expect Fifo to be used. You would expect to get rid of your old stock before you start issuing your newer stock or inventory, particularly if you have perishable goods. Okay, so that's just briefly the difference. Right, but you do need to be aware of these, so make sure that you understand them. And you do need to be able to write up these stores ledger cards using the three methods. And that brings us to the end of this recording.